Back.
like
Back.
like a heart attack.
Okay.
You started this
I
nonsense.
didn't start
All
shit.
right, come on
All right,
now.
all right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Welcome to Six Train Therapy. I'm DJ MayDay, your producer, artist, DJ.
And I'm Professor S, psychotherapist with private practice in the Bronx and Manhattan.
And I have an announcement to make.
What's that? That you're here?
That's not the announcement. The announcement is that we have an email. So
Ah,
if our listeners, if they ever want to ask us a question or me a question or Professor a question, please feel free. The email is sixtraintherapy@gmail.com. You see it right there? It's right there.
and we welcome feedback, like what can make our podcasts better, what's working. We'd really appreciate your feedback on that. Don't
Uh,
we? Wouldn't we appreciate that?
yeah, yeah.
Also, feel free to comments about him and how he's presenting himself.
Are
Feel
you
free.
referring to
You can send a couple to
my
me, but
tropical
like,
shirt?
what's up with that?
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
I don't need to know.
I'll tell you what. Let me just tell you. So, I bought a bunch of Hawaiian shirts in the beginning of summer, right? And then I wore one or two of them, and then I just didn't think about it anymore. And then as I was like looking for, start looking at my fall clothes, I realized I had never wore this shirt. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna wear this shirt today on the pod for you.
So you were looking at your fall clothes.
No, not really. I kind of looked for a sweater because I get out early in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I wanted to just in case because it's a little cooler.
Are they all the same design?
No,
That means
no.
yes. Again, please send your feedback to the podcast if you feel we need to improve, or if there are things that are
I don't know
working,
how I feel about that, Steve.
including DJ Mayday's attire.
Yes,
Feel free
yes.
to
Comment.
question mine. I'm sure I have a few, but not many. Irregularities going on, but that's all right. Actually, I
Irregularities
have
on the shirt.
transparently, I have not. It's not colorful, but I have a Hawaiian shirt.
Oh,
So maybe
ooh,
next time. So maybe next time I'll
yay!
wear mine,
Okay.
and then you'll have comments about me. So feel free to
No,
send them in by
well, I
email.
mean, I don't. I feel like the direction we're gonna go in has got to be organic and natural. I don't know how I feel about people commenting, but if they want to, knock yourself out. But
Let's get on with the show.
this is the show. What's
Let's
the
get
other
on
part of
with
the
what
show?
we are presenting, because what we're going to present is some quite serious topic. We
As
are
always.
we are doing it in our way, but I think the topic is something very topical of today, and we'd like to share our opinion and just some information about it.
Yeah. So the topic today is monkeypox, but monkeypox, I feel like it's sandwiched between COVID and polio and a bunch of other things. So, but we're gonna focus mostly on monkeypox and
And I think a little bit on anti-vaxxers, right, or vaxxers, people that want to, people that don't want to.
yeah,
Is that a fair thing to add
yeah,
into
I
it or
think
not?
I definitely think so because that's part of the equation, right? You got to be
Yes.
vaccinated to avoid getting the monkeypox.
Yeah. Reduce contamination. Yeah.
Yes,
Spreading. Yeah.
but we both did research on
We
the
did.
monkeypox,
We sure did.
and I feel like everybody's becoming like a armchair virologist since COVID.
That's a big word, isn't it?
It is. I'm not even sure if I pronounced it
Because the
correctly.
way you said, I thought your teeth were going to fall out. Virologist.
Virologist?
Virologist.
Oh, please, you with your Medina pronunciation,
Medina.
George
Medea.
Medea.
See, I even had to correct. I had to correct you correcting me. I mean, really. See, this is what I'm dealing with, and I'm sure he's dealing with things, but it's not problematic. It's just something that he and I have to work through, and as we go through each episode, we get better and better.
Anyway, monkeypox.
Yes.
So we both did research. It's a fairly recent iteration of smallpox. It's closely related, and chickenpox. I guess the word pox is the thing they have in common, and they have similar effects on the human body. But yeah, and there's a big scare, right, that comes with that, right? We just got out of COVID, so now you tell me monkeypox, right?
And we're not even completely out of COVID,
Right.
right? I think that's the other thing that's a bit nerve-wracking because we're out of it, meaning that we're doing better, but folks are still getting sick. Folks are still would can I wear a mask here? Don't wear a mask there. So yeah, it just adds to the stress of it all, I think.
Right. So I know you did some research. I want you knock them dead with your
Well, from what
analysis.
what we know at this time is that monkeypox apparently originated in Africa. I think some people do say Asia, but what we just saw was parts of Africa, and then it traveled to Europe, and then it went from there. I don't know if I need to get into Dr. Ogona. Should I talk about Dr. Ogona?
If you want to, yeah. He
So,
was
so Dr. Ogona. First of all, monkeypox has been around for at least 50 years that we kind of know of.
right.
So it's not something brand new. But they kind of like have happened in small outbreaks and it just kind of peters out. So there's a doc. So I saw an article in NPR National Public Radio, July of 2022, and it spoke about this Dr. Agona who discovered a major outbreak in Nigeria 5 years ago, and he had tried to alert the medical authorities about it and was told not to, I guess, share his findings or not to share his information that he had discovered. And he had, from his research, and this is of course before he blew up, but the population he found were young men. I think he said between 20 and 40, that were kind of middle class, and they the pox was more around the genitalia, and so he was trying to get that word out, and the information basically was suppressed. If any of you know of a different
Was it
information about
suppressed or
that,
was it just didn't make the mainstream?
well, all I can do is go by what he said. He was told not to say that.
Oh,
Those were
okay,
his
gotcha,
exact
gotcha.
words that he was told. Who told him? Where did they tell him? I don't know. And so one of the points, though, was that, when it was known in Nigeria, there wasn't any urgency to suppress it or get the information out. It's only once it hit Europe, then there was a more of a aggressive outreach to diagnose and educate and suppress transmission. So that's just another angle on monkeypox.
Well, I heard. I also was like when I was doing the research, like why now, why here, why now, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that monkeypox, I'm sorry, the smallpox vaccine fights off monkeypox. So everyone has been. They eradicated smallpox, so they thought, in 1971. So they stopped giving the smallpox vaccine at 1972. So if
Oh, I
you're,
didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
so if you were born, before 1972,
You got
you're probably vaccinated with smallpox, and you're kind of good because they have not noticed people getting monkeypox who were vaccinated with the smallpox vaccine. So there is a correlation. The vaccine was working, right? But they stopped, before 1972. So anybody born after that probably didn't get a smallpox vaccine, and they're probably more
So I guess the idea was that so many people had been vaccinated, the possibility of transmission
was gone.
was gone. Gotcha.
Right, but that's not really how viruses work, right? Like they manage to live, whether it's in an animal, a human, or something. They find a way, and I think monkeypox is the newest iteration of it. So,
It's another big word, iteration.
yeah, did I say it right?
Please go on.
Did I say it right?
Your teeth didn't fall out, so clearly you said it right. Please go on. I rudely interrupted.
So, so, and also because of the recent advent of anti-vaxxers, people haven't been vaccinating their kids as thoroughly or as normally as they used to before the
Outbreak.
appearance of anti-vaxxers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now kids are actually getting it, and it's also we're starting to get these old viruses back, like polio. Polio was found in the sewage of New York City, so that means it's live in the community. And if there are, and I think it was in Rochester, Rockland County, a child was diagnosed with polio. So these things have a way of kind of coming back if you're not, being consistent with the vaccines generation after generation. So we could
And
see
and and I,
polio.
and I think I'm probably repeating something you just said, but there are communities that just don't believe in
Right.
vaccines. I mean, there's groups of people that it's just not part of their culture, or it's more of a government being involved with their healthcare and therefore wanting to get the government out of my back pocket, so to speak.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
And if I could just speak to
that
polio
makes
really
sense.
quick,
Yes, please do.
also because it actually touched my life, indirectly. But polio was the vaccine was created in the early 50s, right? By 55, it was it was nationally spread throughout the country. The vaccine, that is, that everyone get it, and everyone did, and they did a pretty good job at eradicating it.
But what is polio? And
Polio,
what does it look like if you're
well,
infected and
yeah, if you're infected with
no
polio,
vaccine, you're not vaccinated? What does that look like?
uh, paralysis.
Paralysis?
Yeah, different levels of paralysis in your legs and your
Mm-hmm.
extremities. Like it's really a debilitating disease, and if you get it young enough, you can have deformities too, as well.
Right, right.
So it's a scary disease, and it struck before the vaccine thousands and thousands of kids yearly in the United States.
I remember back in growing up in England, the image of somebody with polio was usually a kid that like maybe one leg was normal and the other one was not
Right,
functional, and they
right,
had crutches of some sort,
right.
and that was like, in my experience, in my vision, my memories, that was the kind of poster of a kid with polio, and usually it was a kid with polio,
Right.
in terms of what I saw in my early
Or
years.
sometimes if you see like videos of third world countries where unfortunately there's like a child like kind of pulling themselves and their legs aren't 9 times out of 10 it might be polio, and it strikes people at different intensities. So it could be just one leg shorter, it could be both legs shorter, it could be paralysis. It's so many things. So when my aunt, she was born in the late 50s in Puerto Rico, and she was born not born with polio, but got polio very young. And even though there was a vaccine in the United States, it didn't get to Puerto Rico in time. And she had polio, and she lived her life with polio. So I know what that looks like only because my aunt had it. And yeah, it's not an easy disease. It's hard to work. It's hard to do anything, raise your children. Everything is more difficult. So
Well, I don't
I
know
think
if
people
I'm.
forgot a little bit
Yeah,
what that's like.
yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. But I'm just curious if the vaccine not being available in Puerto Rico, could that have been part of the healthcare system in the states? Again, not prioritizing certain
Oh, well, for
communities.
sure, for
You know
sure,
what I
without
mean? Because
question.
like that,
They're not gonna get.
there's the one thing that we found with COVID, that the disparity of medical care in our country, and who gets care and who gets what type and quality of care. And we saw there were disparities in communities of color, especially black and brown communities. So when you mentioned that in Puerto Rico, I was just wondering,
Oh no, for
could that
sure,
have been part of it?
for sure, for sure. I mean,
Okay,
she didn't even get treatment until she got here, and she was already older.
okay, got you.
So it was for sure, I think. But also, I found out that was very curious. The polio vaccine, when it rolled out, it wasn't smooth at all. There were because the government didn't take the lead on creating vaccines. They didn't have FDA regulations when coming up with vaccines. It was really private companies doing it, the pharmaceutical companies of the time. So
Do you know how they convinced people to, since the government wasn't leading it? Do you know how they convinced people to take the vaccine? Any idea?
just trust. You trusted the radio. You trusted,
Okay.
you know. I mean, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And when they did roll it out, different companies were doing it. And at one point, one of the companies were just kind of botching batches of it. And I think in one batch, 11 children died because they were given the full full polio disease unintentionally, but it happened, and that's when the FDA stepped in and tried to clean it up and worked on, you know,
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. So they stepped in, and ever since then they've
Some
been
quality control
exactly.
needs to be involved. Okay, that makes sense.
So, but with monkeypox, I also wanted to look up, well, what's the what's it like? You know, we've all seen like the horrific like bubbling looking blisters, and that's some scary looking
Hands,
stuff.
face.
Yeah. So, but
Feet.
we both watched a kind of a little bit of a video on it, and it just seems like it sounds like chickenpox almost to me. Like had chickenpox when I was younger, and I remember being told to not touch it, don't scratch it, you know, leave it alone. And it's kind of the same thing. You go through kind of a flu-like symptoms, and then a couple of days later, that's when the lesions start showing up, and
Yes,
they
but
kind of go away
yeah, it's
on
kind of
most
like
people.
what, a week or more later after the lesions, and they change that with a crusty kind
Scab,
of
yeah,
scab,
and then they
and then
fall
they
off.
fall off, and
Right,
so then you're no longer contagious. So it's survivable.
right.
It's survivable. Survivable. See, my teeth are. If I borrow your false teeth, nasty. Anyway,
That's gross,
so
bro.
yeah, I know. So, um, so also the idea that it's spread through close contact, and primarily at this particular time in the gay bisexual community, that seems to be the kind of like epicenter of where that is showing up. But as you know, are we going to show that video in our,
No,
or do we
no,
need
I don't.
clearance or something like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't show it,
Yeah.
but it was from the WHO, the World Health Organization, and they put out a statement saying that monkeypox was uh, an emergency. So this was in late July, I think July 28th, 29th, and they were saying that 98% of the people who were testing positive worldwide for monkeypox were of gay men or men who sleep with men.
And then there was another video, unless it was part of that video, where the woman was saying that kind of cautioned about making it about the gay bisexual community because it's transmittable to anyone. So, right? Did I get that
Yeah,
right? Did I
yeah,
hear that right?
absolutely, yeah.
So, it's just a cautionary piece so that certain groups are not stigmatized, but also just to be aware it can be transmitted regardless.
Right.
So, but this seems to be with the information we have right now, it's close physical contact, and it's predominantly seems to be showing up in the men who have sex with men communities.
Do you think there's a just the reason maybe why is because gay men are more likely if they see something they're gonna run to the doctor, more cautious?
I thought you were going to say something else because it's men. They'll have multiple partners.
No, well,
Which, I mean, because it's that side too, right? Human behavior. I mean, just looking at gender, and maybe I'm going to get flack for this, but I mean, men tend to be very visual. We tend to be more sexual. And so you just look at different communities, and I could see it happening that way. Maybe we should edit that part out.
no, no,
But
not that
but
kind of shit.
but the thing is that the whole thing about going for medical care, it's possible if
They're
maybe
just more cautious when they see something. They're gonna kind of go because
that's
they
very
are
possible.
maybe more promiscuous. I don't want to kind
Oh,
of.
that part you might have to take out.
Nah, come on, it is. It
But
is
it
what
is
it is.
about being responsible with one's sexual behavior. I mean, that's really at the bottom of that, but also being aware of how many sexual partners, what type of sex you involve in, but also
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
it's spread by sheets and towels and
Yeah, yeah. So
surfaces. So it's not just that, but it's something that everyone should be aware of their own sexual health in general,
yeah,
right?
always, always.
So, can we pivot to like historical
Absolutely, go for it.
information about? So viruses have been part of our world for thousands of years, and so what I did was just look up a few epidemic and pandemic examples of viruses that went out of control and killed a lot of people. So, starting with,
Did you just put on your like
I did. I look
your readers?
intelligent. Now I look like a psychotherapist. Now I
I
look
thought you
now.
looked like a psychotherapist before.
Yes, but glasses add to
The
you know what I'm saying.
mystique.
You know what I'm saying.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Just read them.
So thank you. So in 13 47, the bubonic plague, which they also called the Black Death,
Why I
killed
gotta be
about
black?
25.
Go
Well,
ahead. I'm just
hey,
saying.
this is the language of the English. Everything is black is negative, but that's okay. I'm moving right along. So it killed about 25 million people in Europe, and actually wiped out most of Europe. Like half of Europe was people were dead, and the what stopped the continued destruction of it is that people realized that the virus, which was carried by rats on ships, from merchant ships, they realized that if they keep their homes clean and not have food out, that rats will run around, and that they wash their hands more. It reduced the infection,
And wash your
but
chicken
also
and wash your shins too while you at it.
shins.
Yeah.
What's that got to do?
I don't know. There was a like a
Exactly.
TikTok thing where people going around not washing their legs.
Okay, you know
You never
what?
heard of that?
I'm not sure why you're raising your voice right now, but
I'm just saying. You never heard of that. I'm
some
a
of
little
us,
shocked.
some of us don't always look at TikTok all night long, but that's okay. And so, and the reason why that died out, it killed so many people. In addition to
All
those
the
other
dirty ones.
preventative measures, it didn't have any other hosts to land in, so it petered out.
Do we know what type of virus the Black Plague
No,
was?
I didn't research that.
Oh, okay.
But there's a lot of information out there on the Black Death because it wiped out so many people. There's so much research on it, but I didn't get to that. But it killed most of Europe. So then we moved to let's say 1720, the Great Plague of Marseille, which is in France, and the infection also came through passengers from the Middle East that unloaded cargo, which contained fleas, and the fleas were on the rats, and then that infected the city, and so it went all across
The fleas
France. The infection
was through the fleas.
was through the fleas, and the rats are all over the place. So the fleas are on the rats, and that killed over
So
a hundred
bugs
thousand.
can give
To the flea, yeah,
humans.
yep.
That's wild.
It needs a host to travel and then to infect you. So that's
Right.
how
But I
the
always
Great
felt
Plague.
like bugs and humans are so far apart. Like
Yeah, but they land. Look at mosquitoes. They land on us and infect us.
right, but they carry blood and that's the they sting you, right? And
Yeah,
they
but
it's like a dirty needle.
mosquitoes carry disease also?
Right, but they basically like they eat blood, so like there's blood in them when they sting you. Someone from somewhere else. So I always thought maybe that's how I don't know. That's
I
how
don't
it's
have enough information about that, but I'm sure we'll have a part two, and my co-host will answer that
no,
question.
I'm asking you,
Yeah, that's
Professor.
right. So 1817, we have the cholera pandemic, right? So the Great Plague of Marseille was an epidemic. So that means it's it's localized. So this was actually localized mostly in Marseille and then most of France. Cholera was a pandemic that was found to originate in India outside Calcutta, and it came from contaminated rice initially spread through flies. Southeast Asia to the Middle East, East Africa, and the Mediterranean coast, and also Thailand, Indonesia, that, and the Philippines, an island actually, Java Island in the Philippines. Almost 100,000 people died from cholera, and of course, cholera pops up all over the place in some of the third world countries. But because we say third world countries, they occur in America and European countries. It's just small numbers, small outbreaks. They happen here and there. Then 1920, the Spanish influenza,
That's the fun one.
which started in France. And there's a whole thing about the people in France calling it the Spanish influenza because they didn't want to say it's the French influenza. There's a whole stuff around
Oh,
that.
look at that.
But that came from post World War One, where a lot of soldiers were in cramped hospitals, and people being treated for from chemical attacks. So you had a lot of people in a condensed space, and it was the right environment for something to develop. So the virus started in birds, which mutated into pigs, and from pigs to humans inside hospitals, and that took out 50 to 100 million people, and that's the the way that they managed the Spanish influenza was a lot of the techniques used to manage COVID. So, and they were able to shut down the Spanish, the influenza. I think within 4 years they were able to shut it down because everybody got on board with mouth coverings, washing hands, things like that. Unlike us in
Okay.
America, where we're fighting, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. So
Yeah, but
that's one
there's
part.
also a lot of people died. You said up, what did you say, 100 million? Something like that?
50 to 100 million people
Yeah, that's a
died.
lot. 50 million, 100 million. That. It seems like it ran its course as well. You know what I mean?
But the
But
prevention part was big. I mean, when you read about it, the prevention of how they managed, they didn't have the technology that we have now. And they were able to have those protective measures that help reduce the spread. So, and then, fast forward to COVID, 2021, at least as of in 2021, about 500,000 folks have died this in 2021. So that was one out of every 715 people, one person died from COVID. So, and we have things like West Nile virus, we have things like Lyme disease, all kinds of viruses that pop up every so often. But I think what's interesting about one source that I looked at this is almost like every 100 years, there's a pandemic or major epidemic that happens. I don't know if that's actually true, but some of the numbers and dates kind of do match up with a 100-year cycle. But we didn't really verify that at all. So I just want to share a historical context because viruses aren't going anywhere.
no, it's part of who we are.
Yeah. So that's the historical background
Yeah,
on that.
well, I mean, I don't. Well, so what's the takeaway? Do we run and scream from monkeypox, or do we kind of just grin and bear it and kind of get through it?
I think we should clutch pearls.
Clutched our pearls.
Oh my God. That's one way to do it. Oh my God.
But
Well, I
I
think we,
don't.
we know that, but we know what we can do in terms of washing our hands, cover, protect how we cough, where we cough into our what do you call this? The crook of your arm. The crook of your arm. Again, wiping down surfaces. A lot of COVID is all about, where it lands. So we have information, but viruses are going to be with us.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to say too for building of natural immunity to these viruses. I mean, you have to expose yourself a little bit to them, and it's all about being at the right age. If you're young and you're exposed to monkeypox, you could probably get through it with no problem. I don't know who's like
The elderly,
more vulnerable. Oh,
the elderly.
just the elderly.
Um,
Because I'm not
I
hearing
mean,
a lot about elderly people getting it. I mean, they may. I don't know,
in the
but
beginning, the elderly would definitely die. I mean, yeah,
dying
the
from
elderly.
monkeypox.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of
Oh,
coronavirus. Oh,
oh,
I'm so sorry. I'm into coronavirus.
yeah.
Please ask me the question again.
Well, I'm just saying, like, should we
Sorry.
grin and bear it and just get through it? It's just another thing that we're gonna
Do
kind of
we
have
have
to
a
go
do we
through
have a
as a living
choice?
creature on this planet.
Do we have a choice?
Right. Instead of panicking, the panic I think
Yes.
is what I think
Yes.
bothers me, and I don't like to see my people panic. So
But I think also it's a natural human response, from a mental health point of view.
yes,
From a mental
let's
health point of
go.
view, things like that. We feel like something's out of our control. That can create anxiety. The fear of something that is unknown, we don't know about. I mean, we like that with people we don't know. We can feel anxious about and very protective. And so that creates a lot of anxiety, which is a basic human response. But I think what helps with anxiety is information.
Yes, for
The more
sure.
information that you have, the less likely you'll become anxious, or the amount of anxiety that you
Well, I got
carry
to be
will
honest
make
with
a
you. When
difference.
we decided to talk about this topic, I was like, all right, let me do my research. And the more I did the research, the less I was scared of it. You know what I mean? The less I was like, well, what are we going to do? Unlike COVID, where we didn't know much about it and it was killing people. So, but this one, we do know something about it, and we have its close cousin, smallpox, as a way to deal with it. Because smallpox, because you can actually get smallpox treatment after you already have monkeypox. So there is already a system built in.
Yeah.
So it's already set up. We're already set up since 9/11, I think it was, or
Yeah.
before that,
That's
to
right.
address smallpox and the smallpox vaccine and its treatments.
So we're kind of ready for it in a sense.
Right, in a sense.
But we're still gotta.
And you know what I
There's less
noticed
to
too?
figure out on this. Is a matter of like the rollout of the prevention, the vaccine, things like that.
And another thing to be aware of that I noticed is that you could get one or two bumps, or you can get those big boiling blisters, or you could get just a lot of red marks, or what seems to be like a rash.
Right.
Like there's a couple of different ways it
The
can look.
manifestation. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we saw was that this one guy went to have his lesions looked at, and the doctors had one kind of view of what they look like because of their training, and he wasn't diagnosed with monkeypox initially, but the virus shows has different manifestations on the skin.
Right.
So their model that I guess the original that the doctors saw was a more pronounced lesion, like it raised above the skin and things like that. Looks like a almost like a bubblish kind of
Yeah, like
look.
little
And
marbles on it.
so if that's what you think it is, then the person showing up with red marks or something like that may not see that as monkeypox. So I think they're more educated now. They have to be more educated
Yeah,
now.
yeah. But in doing the research, it also alleviated some of the stress. I'm like, oh shit, here we go again. But actually, it's not the same thing, and it's to me not as scary as like what COVID did. So,
But I
you
think
know,
it wears on
oh
people's
yeah, I'm sick of
minds,
viruses.
like we were talking about before the show. Like we're coming out of COVID, but we're still in COVID, and so here's another thing layered over it on top of it, and then we're talking about
Polio.
now polio is like the buzzword that's beginning to get some traction. So it's
But the only reason it's getting traction is because there's people out there who haven't vaccinated for polio because they are staunch opponents
anti-vaccine or just don't want to do
to a
it.
vaccine.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
And there's also like the suspicion of part of that anti-vax is also like the suspicion of medications being created very quickly. Um,
yeah, I get
things
that.
like that.
I
People
get
feel
that.
very anxious about
I
things
get
like
that.
that.
But and then there's the other element
What
of
element of that?
well, I couldn't help but think this right away. I like, all right, so we're starting to kind of turn the corner a little bit with COVID, at least with our understanding and our preparation. And then all of a sudden, monkeypox. It, the first thing I thought of was like, oh, these
Pharmaceutical.
pharmaceutical
Ah, I
companies
see where you're going.
have to make up their quarterly earnings because they had a great last 2 years. So now they got to come up with something else to just to keep up. I don't know. That definitely did cross my mind, but you know, but it
Yeah,
seems
I
like
mean,
monkeypox is a real thing, but it's not definitely not as
well, you
scary.
know what? At the end of the day, though, regardless, pharmaceutical companies are going to come up with some kind of vaccine, and they will make money.
Oh yeah,
It's going to happen whether it's a conspiracy theory or not. And I know from a friend of mine who works in a pharmaceutical company looking at things like this, the money is huge. I mean, if you work in some of those labs, part of your earnings or part of your compensation packages, you get stocks in the company.
oh yeah. I mean, it's
So yeah,
definitely a money maker. It's not,
it's huge.
but it definitely crossed my mind to think
Yeah,
of like,
yeah.
are we trying to boost up our quarterly earnings this year with the monkeypox? And
Or is it the natural progression of
viruses.
viruses
Yeah,
and it kind of takes out people and that's the natural kind of course of life. But I like what you said that, the more you gain information, knowledge
yeah.
about, the less stressed you become or at least be able to live with it in a way that doesn't kind of,
It was less
take
scary.
over you
Right.
or cause you
I
not to.
actually would know what to do at this point.
Right.
So it's to anybody who's feeling a little skeptical or scared, don't let it paralyze you. Don't let it consume your thoughts. Just get informed, and then God forbid if you do get it, you have a course of action.
And in New York, it's the New York Department of Health. They reach out to them, reach out to your own primary care doctor. The World Health Organization always has something online in terms of what is the updated information about the virus, any of the viruses, and what to do. What is known now that we can do, because that also the information changes the more we learn. Right?
Yep.
So
I think that kind of concludes this episode of Six Train Therapy. I'm
I
DJ
think so.
MayDay.
And I'm Professor S. Please feel free to send your comments about DJ Mayday's shirt, and send many of the comments, please, to him.
What's
But
wrong with the
also,
shirt? I like the shirt.